Okay, so yeah, save on your local drive, preferably if you've got one, a hard drive or a pen drive. Set it up as 1280 by 720 pixels. Then 30 frames per second is acceptable. Most games on mobile devices like the iPhone run at 60 frames per second. We can get away with what we're doing, it's basic stuff at 30 frames per second for now. Because our code won't in the slightest bit be optimized. It's basic code, it's slightly messy, it gets the job done, and it'll teach you the basics before you have to get into all the complex stuff, hopefully further on down the line. So our first example, I'm going to create a graphic on the stage. Ooh, I didn't change the background. To do that, properties, stage, and I'll just make it a dark blue rather than black. I like to have a little bit of color, a little bit of hue there. So we're going to create a basic graphic, put it on the stage for now, and then I'm going to show you how to put things on the stage using code rather than at the at this end of things where it's what you see is what you get kind of environment. I'm going to create an oval. I'm going to give it a white outline for now. Bit of a stroke. Like that. You have to imagine, for my purposes, that that is a bubble. Moving forward, eventually when you create the game, once you've got this core image, you can do things like you can change the color of it using code. You can change the scale of it using code. So for example, in the version I did make a few years ago, the bigger bubbles move slowly, the little bubbles bubble to the top very, very quickly. So, and you know, it's just very simple. It's quite addictive though. People spend a few minutes playing it. So that's the graphic. Once you've drawn it, you double click on the graphic, right click, and you're going to convert to symbol. We've got to use a symbol called a movie clip. You may remember this from last week. Movie clips are symbols that we can speak to using code. That's important because obviously we want to be able to control it using code to make a game. Can't have a game without code. There's also a little thing next to it called registration. This is the point where all calculations are made from. So if there's a position on the screen, like it is now, its position is being calculated from here. By default, in most programs, not just Animate, say Photoshop and things like that, it's calculated by default from the top left. And when it comes to displaying your screen, the reason for that is because it starts at the top left and goes left to right, left to right, left to right. But we're going to use the center because it's a circle. And I'm going to call it circle. You get a library name. The library name is basically one that is just for your organizational purposes within a library of lots of objects. Eventually, you know, if you build a game, you'll have lots of objects. There is another type of name which we worked with last week, which is an instance name. Once it's on the stage, if you want to speak to it, it requires an instance name. So you can call it Harry, or I can just call it Purple Circle, or C1, or anything like that. However, we did all of that stuff on the timeline last week. What we're going to do now is we're going to start moving away from the basic stuff and start putting things on the screen independent of what we do at the start. So, because I can't exactly, well, I could in theory put like 1,000 of these things on the stage and tell them all to move independently, and then the game would end eventually. Whereas the way we're going to do it is we're going to have a game that's based on time, and any number of bubbles could appear because we'll make it slightly random. So what I want to do is where it says linkage, I'm going to tell it circle with a capital C. The convention for naming what is known as a class, and this is a class definition. Those of you that were here last week when we named our sounds, and we were creating essentially a class definition of that sound, it's the same principle. So classes have capital letters, instance names have lowercase. The reason for this is so you can tell the difference between when you're working with a class and when you're working with an instance on stage. Again, I'm going to have two layers for this, but Actually, don't need to there because I've got nothing on the stage at the moment. Actions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make it appear just like that on stage. So actions, for those of you who can remember. Ash, can you remember what button you press to get actions up? George? Say that loudly. F9. F9. Up it comes. Okay. Who can remember working with the sounds last week? Ben, Rob, you remember a little bit about how we created that sound? It don't have to be perfect, but give me something. Go on then, Johnny. Yeah, we named the sound in the same way that I've named this circle. That's right. That's the class name. What we did then was we went into code. So currently what we're doing is we're working inside this file on the timeline. Eventually I'm going to teach you how to do this in a separate file. I like to keep my code and my other stuff separate. It allows you to make things modular. Reason for that, in short, when you do something in a game or in an interactive media product that you might want to reuse it again, it makes sense to have like everything as a component, so you can just drag and drop it into the next project. Coders tend to be all about efficiency and shortcuts. So we are going to create an instance on the stage. So this, where it says var, which is short for variable, I'm going to give it a name. This is the same as me putting something on the stage and then going into the instance name box and saying its instance is this. So if I say C1, short for circle 1, it's going to be of type circle. Now, circle doesn't exist in the drop-down list that I'm getting, but at least I'm getting turned in because I've created it. If I created it and saved it as a separate ActionScript file inside of a library, then it would pick it up because you can make it do that. Equals, so I'm going to tell it what it equals. And it's just new circle. I'm just telling it to create a new circle, a new object of that type. If I test that using Control and Enter, there'll be nothing there. Once I've created it, I've also got to put it on the stage, as it were. I've got to say, be visible. And so when I say the words add child, because it's a child of the stage, and the massive list that the stage contains, ultimately, and I put that name in there, C1, Control and Enter again to test it, by magic, you'll see, top left corner, half of a quarter of a circle, because it's been, well, can anyone tell me why it's at the top left corner? You're thinking about the right point. So when I was talking about how the screen goes from top left to right, left to right, left to right. So the screen's registration point is top left. The registration point for the circle is in the center. So if I'm measuring where the circle lands, the center of the circle is in the top left corner. And then, very basics, I just want to tell it X. I want that to equal, I don't know, how big's my screen? It's 1280 by 720. So what's half of 1280? Okay, 640. And 720, half of 720. So it should be roughly around the center of the screen. X and Y. Is everyone comfortable with X being horizontal and Y being vertical? A lot of you have just done maths recently, so I assume you've done some Cartesian coordinates recently. Test. Oh no, it's told me off. What's it told me off for? Oh, right, I'll let you figure that one out. Why has it told me off? Go on, Bradley.
It's a different circle too.
There we go. Spot on the money. C2. I haven't created anything called C2, so that causes a whole problem. And in some cases, at worst, things won't work very well, or at all. And at best, it might just be an anomaly that you can't figure out. It's better when it breaks it entirely. It becomes more obvious what the problem is. Okay, a circle on a screen. Not massively impressive at this point. That's what you're going to be working towards now. So I want you to start off by create a circle, turn it into a movie clip, give it a name, and then I'll leave the code up on screen for you.